One of the best value ways of improving your German is to find ways to use what you already know in new and different ways. And that's where our participles come in. We've got two of them with the inspiringly descriptive names Partizip I and Partizip II. One of them relates to completed events and the other to ongoing ones. And of the two of them, it's probably Partizip II that you are more familiar with. We use it in the perfect tense. Ich habe das Wasser gekocht. The Pluperfect. Ich hatte das Wasser gekocht. Futur 2. Ich werde das Wasser gekocht haben. And even in the passive, das Wasser wird gekocht. One participle and 4 different use cases. So let's think about all of these. What do they actually have in common? What is that participle telling us? Well, in each case, it's referring to a completed action. Whenever we see Partizip II, gespielt, eingekauft, gebracht, gelaufen, or studiert, then we know that the action described by the verb has been, had been, or will have been completed. And this is the biggest difference between it and that other participle, Partizip EINS. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because this is actually where it gets quite interesting. Since this participle refers to a completed action, we can use it to describe any noun that is the result of that action. Let's take this bicycle. It was broken, but now it's fixed. Well, that's a completed action. So I can say, das ist ein repariertes Fahrrad. End result, a fixed bicycle, repaired bicycle. Oh, and by the way, these are attributive adjectives, so you're going to need some adjective endings, and check out this video if you're not sure how they work. Okay, so ein repariertes Fahrrad. Maybe you're thinking to yourself, well, that's all pretty easy. I know this already. Well, just wait a minute, because there's a lot more that we can do. We could include a manner phrase to say how it has been repaired. Das ist ein sorgfältig repariertes Fahrrad. Or we could say when the bike was repaired. Das ist ein neulich repariertes Fahrrad. Or what about where it was fixed? Das ist ein in Berlin repariertes Fahrrad. And we can also include information about who did the fixing. Das ist ein von einer Mechanikerin repariertes Fahrrad. And you could even include all of this information. Das ist ein neulich von einer Mechanikerin in Berlin sorgfältig repariertes Fahrrad. Or another example might be if we're describing perhaps a law that has been passed by Parliament, we could come up with a phrase that tells us when, how, where, and in this case, what perhaps annoyed us. Now brace yourself for this one, because it's a bit of a mouthful. So it's something I think that we're going to see more informal writing rather than being something that you'd actually come out with yourself. Wir ärgern uns über ein gerade erst in Australien von der Regierung schnell erlassenes Gesetz. So that's the participle I'd say that we are probably more familiar with. And this is the biggest difference between our two participles. Partizip II relates to a completed action, whereas Partizip EINS, on the other hand, indicates that an action is ongoing. And instead of that familiar GE at the beginning of most of our participles, Partizip EINS is just formed by adding an END to the stem of the verb. And actually, you already know this from adjectives like spannend, aufregend, or even frustrierend. But if we know that it's formed by modifying verbs, then this suddenly opens up a lot of opportunities for us. Instead of referring to the result of an action, we can describe the actual ongoing action. So if we've got a cup of tea, then we need some boiling water for this. Our verb is kochen, to boil. So boiling water is simply kochendes Wasser. Let's take these 6 verbs, or maybe more, and use them as participles to describe some nouns. Which ones fit best? Let's match them up. We've got brennen, schlafen, klingeln, bellen, fließen, parken, warten, blinken, singen, fotografieren. So we might have eine brennende Kerze, ein schlafendes Kind, ein klingelndes Handy, einen bellenden Hund, fließendes Wasser, oder ein parkendes Auto, wartende Fahrgäste, ein blinkendes Licht, eine singende Frau, einen fotografierenden Touristen. So as well as describing what the people or things are doing, this participle is also used to describe certain characteristics and to reference habitual activity. That's why we see words like Studierende. These are people who are studying, so students. People who travel could be Reisende. People teaching might be Lehrende. Listeners could be Zuhörende. People watching this video are Zuschauende. What's nice about phrases like this, I think, is that they can be used as gender-neutral ways of referring to mixed gender groups of people. And this is something that you see quite a lot in official documents. Like with our other participle, Partizip II, we can also add in more information to this participle. Remember the parked car? In German, it's a parking car, ein parkendes Auto. Maybe illegally, perhaps, ein illegal parkendes Auto. How long has it been there? We can add that in as well. Ein seit 4 Tagen illegal parkendes Auto. What about the mobile phone that's been ringing? Das ist ein seit 2 Minuten laut klingelndes Handy. Or the child that's been sleeping, 8 hours perhaps. Das ist ein seit 8 Stunden tief schlafendes Kind. But as we've seen, these participles are all about describing actions that are either completed or ongoing. Partizip II for finished actions, Partizip I for actions that are ongoing. But what about actions that still need to happen, actions that are waiting to be done? Well, German has got a solution for that too, and it uses our Partizip I in a slightly different way. Let's go back to our bicycle. We've already talked about ein repariertes Fahrrad, a bicycle that has been repaired, and we've talked about eine reparierende Mechanikerin, a mechanic who is carrying out the repairs. But what if the bike is broken and it's still waiting there to be fixed? Well, in English, we might say a bicycle to be repaired or a bicycle that needs repairing. In German, we can express this by adding in the word zu before the infinitive and then turning it into a participle. Here's what we do. Ein zu reparierendes Fahrrad. So this construction has got a modal meaning, hasn't it? It expresses necessity, obligation, or even possibility. It's always passive in its meaning. The bicycle itself isn't doing anything. Something needs to be done to it. Let's look at a couple more examples. Maybe we've got some questions that need to be answered. Das sind die zu beantwortenden Fragen. Or maybe we've even got a problem that needs to be solved. Das ist ein zu lösendes Problem. And just like with our other participles, we can add in more information as needed. Maybe when something needs to happen, die heute noch zu beantwortenden Fragen, if the questions need to be answered today. Or ist das vielleicht ein sofort zu lösendes Problem, a problem that needs to be solved immediately. Where? Das in der Werkstatt zu reparierende Auto. By whom? Die vom Chef zu beantwortenden Fragen. Now combine all of them and you get something like this perhaps. Der heute noch von unserem Team sorgfältig zu schreibende Bericht. Now, you're probably noticing that these phrases are getting quite long and formal, and you'd be right, because this construction is much more common in written German, official documents, academic papers, legal texts, more so than in everyday speech. In conversation, Germans usually just use a relative clause, die Fragen, die heute beantwortet werden müssen. But it's still worth knowing because you'll encounter this a lot when reading formal German. Also das war's dann für heute und auch für dieses Video. Danke fürs Zuschauen. Bis bald. Alles Gute und tschüss.
Servus.